Let me ask you something. When was the last time you watched a great movie like Interstellar, Oppenheimer, or cartoon Soul? Something that made you feel alive. And you walked out thinking, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to build something real, or become something, or I'm going to stop wasting time. And then 3 days later, nothing changes. You went back to the same routine, the same scrolling and the same excuses, the same version of yourself. Most people blame themselves for that. I'm lazy, I have no discipline, I'm not built for greatness. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the movies you love, the ones that inspire you most, are also the ones that are programming you to stay small? So stay with me because this one goes deep. I grew up on movies, and for a long time, especially during my darkest years, movies were my escape. When I was deep in addiction, when reality felt unbearable, I would disappear into films for hours. Interstellar, a man sacrificing everything for the thing that is bigger than himself. Inception, a genius bending reality through sheer willpower. Oppenheimer, a mind so powerful that it changed the course of history. And I would sit there completely absorbed, feeling the rush of inspiration. This is how life should feel like. This is who I could be. But here's what I didn't understand there. I was using inspiration as a substitute for action. The feeling of watching that Cooper pilot this spacecraft, it gave me emotional experience of ambition without requiring me to do anything. The feeling of watching Oppenheimer.
We're in a race against the Nazis.
Carry the weight of his genius. It gave me a sensation of purpose without me having to build something real. I was getting high on other people's stories. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think millions of people do the exact same thing for years and calling it motivation. Here's what nobody talks about when it comes to self-improvement and storytelling. Hollywood doesn't show you the process. Hollywood shows you the transformation. Think about every great film you've seen. In Interstellar, we see Cooper's mission, his sacrifice, the wormhole, his Tesseract. What we don't see, the 10,000 hours of training, the paperwork, the days of nothing happening. In Inception, we see Cobb assembling a team of geniuses, pulling off the impossible. What we don't see, the years of failed attempts, the boring meetings, the self-doubt at 3 a.m. In Oppenheimer, we see mind that seems almost supernatural at its brilliance. What we don't see, the slow grinding and years of studying. The decades of quiet work before the breakthrough. Hollywood compresses years, sometimes entire lifetimes, in 2 hours of peak moments. And your brain watched that and unconsciously starts to believe that transformation is supposed to be like that. Dramatic, fast, cinematic. And then you sit down to work on your real life. Your YouTube channel, your business, your health, and it feels nothing like that. It feels slow, boring, uncertain, no dramatic music, no montage, no clear sign that you are on the right path. So your brain sends you a signal. This isn't working, this isn't it, maybe I'm not meant for this. And you stop. Not because you failed, but because reality didn't match the emotional template Hollywood. Now here when it gets more interesting. Remember the movie Saul?
Okay, look, I already know everything about Earth, and I don't want anything to do with it.
Saul seems like the most anti-Hollywood movie ever. It literally argues that obsession with your purpose can make you miss your actual life. That the small moments, the leaf falling, a meal shared, a sunlight through your window. That's what living actually is. Beautiful moments, and I loved that film. But here's the irony. Saul delivers that message in the most cinematic, emotional, overwhelming way possible. So you watch it, you cry, you feel it deeply. You think, oh yes, I need to slow down, I need to appreciate life. And then the credits roll, the music ended, and you go back to doom scrolling, because the feeling of the lesson replaced the living the lesson. This is the core problem. Hollywood gives you the feeling of transformation without transformation actually happening. It's not malicious, it's not conspiracy, it's just what stories do. But when you consume them passively, without awareness, they slowly replace your real ambition with the feeling of ambition. And feelings without action are actually an expensive daydream. There is a psychological concept called narrative transportation. When you are deeply absorbed in a story, a film, a book or a series, your brain partially loses the distinction between what's happening on the screen and what's happening in your real life. You feel Cooper's grief as your grief. You feel Oppenheimer's burden as your burden. You feel triumph of the hero as it was your triumph. And here's the key. The emotional release, the catharsis, actually reduces your drive to search for the real thing. Your nervous system got a version of the experience. It doesn't know that it wasn't real. It just knows the emotional need just met. This is why you can watch a documentary about climbing Everest and feel both inspired and somehow more comfortable sitting in your couch. The inspiration and the comfort happen simultaneously, and comfort usually wins. Now add to this social media. Every day you consuming highlight reels, other people peak moments, the breakthroughs, their transformation. It's a Hollywood logic applied to real life. Compression, drama, only the best shot. And again, your brain watches and get emotionally hit and mistakes the feeling of inspiration for the doing of the work. I did it for years. I consumed so much content about transformation while my real life stays exactly the same. The watching feels like progress. It wasn't. So, am I telling you to stop watching great films? No, that's not the point. Interstellar is still the most profound things I ever experienced. Soul generally changed how I feel about meaning. The point is to change your relationship with inspiration. Here's what actually helped me. Separate the feeling from the decision. After you watch something that moves you, don't act immediately. Sit with it. Let the emotions settle. Then ask yourself, what specifically do I want to do differently starting tomorrow morning? Not I want to be great, but I will write for 30 minutes before I open my phone. Specificity kills the fantasy, and that's a good thing. Notice when you are using inspiration as a procrastination. There is a version of self-improvement content consumption that's just a procrastination wearing a costume. If you watch 3 videos about discipline today and written nothing, built nothing, you weren't getting inspired, you were hiding. I know this because I did it constantly. The moment I stopped consuming inspiration and started tolerating the boredom of real work, everything started to move. Third, build your own story constantly. Here's what Hollywood gets right. Every great story has a protagonist who acts against fear, despite uncertainty, despite feeling not ready. You are the protagonist of your own life. But unlike a movie, nobody will give you a dramatic moment that forces you into action. You have to choose it. Quietly, without music, without anyone watching. This part Hollywood never shows, and it's only part that actually matters. I still watch films. I didn't feel the urge to become Cooper. Last time I watched Interstellar, I didn't feel the urge to become another Cooper. I felt something quieter. Gratitude that I'm building something real. Even if it's slow, even if it's nobody watching yet, even if there is no dramatic music while I'm doing this. But here's the truth about real transformation, the kind I lived through. It doesn't look like a movie. It looks like waking up when you don't want to.
I see it now. The path is clear. No longer a mystery, just execution.
It looks like doing the work when you have no idea if it's working. It's like choosing your path again and again, like I'm choosing YouTube in the most ordinary and cinematic moments of your life. That's not flaw in your story. That's what actually real story looks like. Hollywood told you to wait for a moment that feels worthy of the hero you want to become. I'm telling you, stop waiting for that moment. You are already in it. If this hits something in you, drop a comment with the film that inspired you the most. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper and press like. Here's something the scientists don't advertise. Every single day, meteors enters the Earth's atmosphere. Thousands of them, and some of them are size of a car, and some even larger. And almost every single one burns up before it reaches the ground. The atmosphere does its job quietly. No announcement, no warning system, no news coverage, because there is nothing to report. The threat dissolves on its own. Now think about the last week of your life. How many deeds of catastrophes you prepare that didn't occur? How many conversations did you rehearse that never happened? How many worst scenarios did you build in full cinematic detail that burned up in the atmosphere before they even touched your life? You've been tracking meteors. And most of them will never land. I want to tell you about a period of my own life where my brain was basically a disaster prediction service. This was during and after my recovery, when the substances were gone and suddenly I had a full access to my thoughts again. My mind went into overdrive. Every one of the decisions felt enormous. Every uncertain situation becomes a catastrophe, potentially. Every relationship, even it's business or personal, carried the weight. What if this goes wrong? What if I lose this, or what if I can't handle it? Oh, I remember planning scenarios that maybe 3% of actually chance of happening. Losing sleep over conversations that existed only in my head. Avoiding situations because of the outcome that never occurred and might never occur. And here's the thing about my anxiety-driven thinking. It feels productive, it feels like preparation, like responsibility, like everyone is naive. And you think you are realistic, but what it actually is. Your nervous system running situations that cost you real energy, real time, real presence, the problem that exists only in the future and most of which will never occur. The meteors was everywhere in my mind, and I was standing in the open field just staring at them, completely forgetting to live my actual life. Let's talk about what actually happening psychologically. The formal term is anticipatory anxiety. Your brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, has an extraordinary ability to simulate future. To model outcomes, to run scenarios. This is one of humanity's greatest evolutionary advantages. It's why we can plan, build or create. But this same ability, when get dysregulated, when it runs without filters, without rest, becomes one of the most exhausting things in your mind. Here's the core problem with catastrophic thinking. It violates one of most basic principles of reality. Most negative outcomes never happen. Studies on worry, actual psychological research find that somewhere in between 85 to 95% of what people worry about either never occurs or significantly more manageable than they were feared. 85 to 95%. Just think about it, and think about it in terms of your own life. Think about the last 10 things you dread about. How many of them was as bad as you were imagined, and how many never arrived at all? And yet your nervous system spent resources on all of them. Real cortisol, real sleep disruption, real presence stolen from today. The meteors burn up, but the watching cost you anyway. There's another layer in here. Cognitive distortion. Specifically what psychologists call catastrophizing. The mental habit of taking an uncertain situation and automatically jumping into worst possible scenario. Your brain isn't doing this to torture you. It learned somewhere, probably very early. Preparing for the worst is a way of protection. If you imagine catastrophe first, you can be blinded by it. It's just a protection mechanism, just one that stops serving you long after the environment was changed that created it. Let's be honest about what chronic anticipatory anxiety costs, not just in stress, in life. Every hour you spend problem solving that doesn't exist is an hour you are not present in the life that actually exists. The relationship in front of you, the work you're actually doing, the small moments that actually exist right now and will never exist again. Worry pulls you out from living your actual life and into the situations of the future that statistically probably won't happen.
Yeah.
And here's the cruelest part. When something difficult does happen, something real, something now, you are often already depleted. You spent your resources on Meteors. You have nothing left for the actual ground level problem. Real resilience isn't created by worrying more. It's built by trusting your abilities to handle things when they actually arrive. So how do you actually interrupt this pattern? Distinguish between useful planning and anxious simulation. There is a real difference. Useful planning you identifying as genuine risk, replay it endlessly, prepare emotionally for it, and never reach a stopping point. One has an end point, but the other one don't have this end point. Ask yourself, is there an action that I can take right now about this concern? If yes, take it and stop thinking about it. If no, you are not planning, you are simulating. And simulation without action is just a suffering. Second, reality test your worst case. When the catastrophic thoughts arrive, don't fight it and don't feed it. Ask it one honest question. What is the actual probability of this happening? Not the emotional probability, not the felt sense of certainty, the actual realistic historical probability. Most catastrophes don't survive honest probability assessment. They need the fog of anxiety to feel real. Bring them to the light and they usually shrinks. Third, practice present moment anchoring. When you catch yourself in the future, in the simulation or tracking the meteors, come to one specific detail, sensory detail of right now, not as a spiritual practice, as a neurological interrupt. Your brain cannot fully simulate the future and be fully present at the same time. Choose presence and be repeatedly in this. Every time you've noticed you left. I still worry sometimes. A decision coming up, an uncertain outcome, the old simulation engine start running. But I catch it earlier now. And I ask myself, is this meteor going to land? Because most of them won't. Most of what you are dreading right now will burn up in the atmosphere long before it reaches you. And the ones that do land, you will handle them. Not because you prepared to them in advance, but because you are someone who handles things. You've already handled things harder than most of what you are worrying about. The sky isn't falling. You just forgot to look at the ground you are standing on. Come back. This moment, unremarkable, specific and ordinary moment. This is your actual life, and it's been waiting for you to show up. Tell me in comments what's the worry you keep coming back. I'm really curious about this. And subscribe, press like.
It is a lie. They know.
You made a decision, you felt good about it, and someone looked at you certain way, or said something offhand, or posted something that felt directed at you. And suddenly the decision doesn't feel so solid anymore. You started second guessing, replaying what they said, wondering if they are right. Wondering what others will think, wondering if you are the problem. You didn't ask for their opinion, you didn't even respect their opinion, but somehow it got in anyway. And the most uncomfortable part, this isn't weakness, this is immaturity. This is one of the deepest psychological mechanisms built on every human being on the planet. Understanding it won't make you immune, but it might finally give you the upper hand. I want to tell you the moment that caught me completely off guard. I'd been working on my channel for over the year. I didn't even consciously value. Made a comment. Not cruel, not even that specific, just dismissive. The kind of tone and look that says, who do you think you are? And I felt it land. Not in my thoughts, in my body. Something tightened, something defensive activated. I noticed myself wanting to explain myself, to justify, to prove. And I caught it. Not immediately, but I caught it. That reactive pull to defend, to perform, that wasn't me responding. That was something older than me responding. A pattern installed long before I had any say in the matter. That's when I started to ask real questions. Why do other people's opinion reach me even when I've decided they shouldn't? What is actually happens in those moments? Here's what actually happening. When someone judges you, criticizes you, dismisses you or look at you in a certain way, your brain doesn't process it as information first. It processes it as a threat. The amygdala, the oldest part of your brain, doesn't distinguish a lion in the grass and a disapproving look from a colleague. Both triggers the same alarm system. Heart rate up, muscles tense, attention narrows. This is why logic doesn't help in those moments. You can know intellectually that their opinion doesn't matter. Your body already decided otherwise. But here's where it gets deeper. Jung called it projection. The opinions that hit us hardest are rarely just about other person's opinion. They're hitting something inside us that we already believe in ourselves. The criticism lands because the part of you accepts it. When someone implies you are not good enough, it stings because the voice inside you that's been saying the same thing for years. The opinion isn't creating a wound, it's finding wound that already was there. And this is the ego defense system in action. The ego, in psychological terms, is the structure that protects the sense of self. When that sense of self is threatened by judgment, by comparison, by rejection, the ego activates. Fight, you argue back, feel defensive, you attack. Flight, you shrink, you apologize, you start people pleasing. Freeze, you go numb, you disconnect, you pretend not to care. Most people oscillate between all three without even understanding what's driving them. They think they're reacting to the person. They're actually reacting to the wound. Here's what nobody in the self-improvement space tells you. You will never stop caring what people think. Completely, forever, done. That's not the goal. The goal is to build enough self-awareness that you can feel the pull and choose your response consciously instead of reacting automatically. There is a difference between I don't care what anyone thinks, which is usually either a lie or a defense mechanism, and I noticed their opinion landed. I felt the pull to react and I choose to respond from my own values instead of from the wound. The second one is real freedom, not the absence of reaction, the presence of choice. The people who claim that they are completely immune to other people's opinions are often the most controlled by them, because they have never looked at the mechanism itself. They just built a wall around it. Walls aren't freedom, they are just suppression. So what do you actually do with this? First, learn to recognize reaction. Before you respond to anyone's opinion, notice what happened in your body first. Did something tighten? Did you feel a pull to defend yourself? Did you feel the urge to explain yourself? That activation is the signal. Not that they are right, not that you need to respond, just that something was touched. Get curious about what. The second, ask whose voice it actually is. When someone's opinion lands hard, ask yourself honestly, who does this voice sound like? Often it's not the person in front of you. It's a parent, a teacher, the old version of yourself, or an old version of the environment where you learned that certain parts of you were unacceptable. You're not reacting to them, you are reacting to a ghost. Naming a ghost takes away almost all his power. Third, build an identity that isn't approval dependent. This is a long game. The reason others people's opinion control you is because part of you is built on their validation. Every time you act from your own values without needing confirmation that it was right, you build something that external opinions can't reach. Not overnight, not in a week, but consistently over the months and years, you will start to feel the difference. Their words still land, but they land on something solid, something that doesn't move. I still feel it sometimes. A comment, a look, a tone, something lands and I feel the old pull activate. But now I recognize it faster. And instead of reacting from the wound, I get curious about it. What is this touching? What does this say about what I believe that has in myself? What would I do here if I was moving from my values instead of fear? That pause, that tiny space of awareness changes everything. Other people's opinions will still exist. Some of them will still find a way in, but they only control you as long as you don't know that they are there. See the mechanism and you start to own it instead of it owning you. Tell me in comments what kind of opinion hurts you, the dismissive one, the comparison one, the ones from people that you don't even respect. I want to know it. So subscribe, press like and drop this comment. There is a version of anger that nobody talks about. Not the kind that explodes, not the one that is screaming, the slamming doors, the things you regret saying. The quiet kind, the anger you're swallowing in the middle of argument because you don't want to cause a scene. The anger you turn on into a joke because vulnerability feels too dangerous. The anger you bury so deep you stop recognizing it as anger at all. It just becomes tension in your shoulders. It becomes distance in your relationships. It becomes that slow irritability that follows you through your days like shadow you can't shake. Most people were never taught what to do with anger. They were taught to manage it, suppress it, control it, rise above it. But here's what I learned the hard way. Anger that has nowhere to go doesn't disappear. It just finds somewhere else to live. For most of my life, I was what people would call calm. Not because I didn't feel anger, because I was terrified of it. Growing up, anger was meant a chaos in my environment. It meant things breaking, relationship breaking. So I made a decision early on, probably without realizing it. I was making it that my anger is dangerous, that it needed to be contained, hidden and managed. And I got very good at that. I could sit in situations that deserved rage and feel completely still on the outside. And people would say, you're so calm, you're so controlled. What they don't see, what was happening underneath. During my addiction years, anger was there. I just had a very effective way of not feeling it. Substances are incredible at that. They put a thick wall between you and everything uncomfortable. But when I got sober, when the wall came down, the anger was still there. Every bit of it waiting. And I had no idea what to do with it, because nobody have ever taught me. Not how to feel it, not how to express it, know how to move it through my body without destroying something in the process. That's what this video is about. Not anger management, not how to suppress it, how to actually feel it, how to move it through you so it stops living in your body and ruining your life in the inside. So let's talk about what anger actually is, because most of us were taught that anger is a problem, a character flaw, a weakness, something to overcome. Psychology sees it differently. Anger is information. It's your nervous system telling you something here violates your values. Something here is crossed the boundary. Something here is not okay. It's one of the most important signals your body sends you. The problem isn't the anger. The problem is what we do with it, or more accurately, what we don't do with it. There is a concept in psychologically that is called emotional suppressing. When you consistently push your emotions down, anger, grief or fear, your body doesn't release them. It stores them in the muscles, in jaw, in the chest, in the pattern of how you breathe. Over time, suppressed anger becomes chronic anxiety, depression, emotional numbness, passive aggression, physical tension that never fully releases. You don't get rid of anger by not feeling it. You just change the form it takes. Jung calls this the shadow. The parts of yourself you reject, the emotions you deem unacceptable, don't disappear into nothing. They move into your unconscious, and from there they run your behavior without your permission. The person who never gets angry on public often has the most explosive inner world. The person who prides themselves for calmness is sometimes the most controlled, in a worst sense. Real emotional health isn't about never feeling anger. It's about having a relationship with it, knowing what it's telling you, and knowing how to move it through you without it taking over. So what actually works? Not suppression, not exposure. Somewhere in between. What I call ecological release. Ways of moving your anger through your body that don't hurt you or anyone else. That honor that you are feeling without letting it run the show. Here are the ones that actually helped me. First, physical movement without intention. Not just going to the gym, not passive exercise. Movements where the explicit purpose is to release. For me, video games did this in a specific way. Not escapism, not numbing. When I played with full intensity, when I let myself get competitive, frustrated, loud, something moved. The control aggression of gaming, the permission to react, to lose, to win, gave my nervous system a context where anger is acceptable, where it had somewhere to go. It sounds too simple, but your body doesn't need elaborate rituals. It needs permission. Permission to feel what it's feeling. Other physical release that works: running until your lungs burn. Hitting a pillow, not gently, actually hitting it. Tearing paper, throwing ice in a bathtub. Any physical act where you give anger a body to move through. The second one, vocal release. This one takes courage. Screaming into a pillow, going into the forest to scream out loud. Not words, not arguments, just sound. The first time I did this, it felt ridiculous. Standing alone between the trees, making noise like an animal. And then something cracked open. Because anger lives in the throat, in chest, in held breath, giving it sound, even privately, even alone. Moves it in a way that nothing else does. Your nervous system doesn't need an audience. It needs an outlet. The voice is one of the most direct pathways from the inside of your body to the outside world. Using it fully without filtering it is one of the most underrated emotional releases. The third, writing without editing. Get a piece of paper, not screen, paper, and write the anger out. Everything, all of it, without reading it back, without making it pretty, without thinking who might see. Then burn, tear it, throw it away. The point isn't to understand the anger yet. The point is to get it out from your body and into the physical world, so your nervous system stops carrying it alone. Understanding comes from release, after, not before. The fourth, naming it out loud.
What is happening? I won't let this define me. Go!
This sounds the smallest, but might be the biggest. When you feel anger rising, instead of managing it, suppressing it, explaining it away, just say it out loud if nobody is there. I'm angry right now. This made me angry. I feel rage about this. Something about naming an emotion in the first person out loud activates the prefrontal cortex, creates a split seconds of space between feeling and reaction. Not to suppress the feeling, to be present with it. That space, tiny as it is where choice lives. I'm not a calm person because I don't feel anger. I'm calm when I am because I've learned how to give anger somewhere to go before it takes over. The forest, the pillow, the page, the video game at full intensity. The moments alone where I allow myself to feel exactly what I feel. Nobody teaches us this. We taught to be appropriate, to regulate, to adult, to handle our emotions so they don't inconvenience someone. And there's a place for that. But underneath all the regulations, the anger still needs to move. Your body carries things longer than you realize. Give it permission not to destroy, not to explode, just to feel. That's not weakness, it's a beginning of something real. Tell me in comments how you deal with your anger, what works for you and what doesn't. And press like, subscribe. Every self-improvement influencer tells you the same thing. Cold showers will change your life. Cold showers build discipline. Cold showers boost testosterone and kills anxiety. Make you feel like a warrior every single morning. I heard it too many times, so I decided to test it on myself. 30 days every single morning, no excuses. And here's what I can tell you after those 30 days. Some of it is real, some of it is completely nonsense. And the thing that actually changed had nothing to do with what I expected going in. This is my honest experience. No excuses. No exaggeration. No selling you anything. Just what actually happened to me. I want to be honest why I started this. It wasn't because I read some studies about cortisol. It wasn't because Andrew Huberman told me this. I started because I was in a rough patch mentally. I was going through transition personally, mentally, and I need something concrete to hold on to. Something I could control when everything else felt uncertain. Cold showers feel like that. It's a daily commitment. A small act of doing something hard when doing hard things felt impossible. So one day I turned the dial to cold and immediately questioned decisions that I ever made in my life. That first week was brutal. Let me walk you through what actually happened. Week 1, every single morning felt like a small war. The moment the cold water hit, my body went into a full mode of panic. Heart racing, gasping, brain screaming, get out, get out. But here's the thing I noticed almost immediately. After every single shower, I felt a wake that coffee never gave me. Not hyped, not anxious, just present, here, clear. The mental fog that usually followed me in the first hour of the morning, completely gone. That part completely real. Week 2, something interesting started to happen. The shower itself got slightly easier, but more importantly, I started the moment of hesitation before getting in. The split second when your brain says you don't have to do this today and choosing to do it anyway, that moment started to feel like real point of this exercise. Not the cold water, the decision to do it when you don't want to do it. Week 3. This is where it gets complicated. The benefits I expected: more energy, better mood, less anxiety, were inconsistent. Some days I felt like a goat, focused, driven, great. Other day, cold showers done, and still felt flat, unmotivated, and unfocused. And that's where I started questioning the narrative. Because every single video about cold showers sounds like a magic switch, like the cold water itself rewires your brain. But what I experienced was messier than that. The cold showers didn't fix my mood, it didn't eliminate my anxiety, it didn't make me suddenly disciplined in all areas of life. What it did consistently was give me one win at the start of every day. One moment of choosing discomfort deliberately, and that I won't take away from it. That matters. Week 4. By this point, this thing becomes a routine. And here's the irony, the moment it became a routine, it stopped feeling like discipline. It just felt like showering. The psychological benefits of doing something hard stops when it became not so hard. The moment your nervous system adapts, the cold becomes normal, and the normal don't build character. So after 30 days, here's my honest feedback. What's real? The immediate mental clarity after a cold shower. Completely real. There is solid science behind it. Cold shower triggers release of noradrenaline, which generally improves focus and discipline. The discipline effect on week 1 and week 2. Also real. Starting your day with something uncomfortable does create a psychological momentum. The sense of, if I did that, I can do this. What's overhyped? The idea of that cold showers will make you different character. That's not real. I've seen that some people online treat cold showers as a personality transplant. Like stepping out of that shower, they've become a stoic warrior immune to weakness. That's not what happens. You step out cold, awake, and slightly proud of yourself. And then you're still you, with all your same patterns, same fears, same avoidances. The cold shower doesn't reach the deeper part. And the deeper stuff, it's where the actual work really is. What surprised me the most, the thing that changed most, wasn't my body or my energy. It was my relationship with discomfort. 30 days of deliberately choosing something uncomfortable quietly shifted something in how I relate to resistance. Not just in the shower, in my relationships, in my work, in my creative process. When resistance shows up, the familiar voice says, "Not today. Later, when you feel ready." I started recognizing it faster and dismissing faster. Because I'd been practicing dismissal every single morning. That nobody tells you about. And that was worth the 30 days. Here's what I think cold showers really are, and what they aren't. They aren't a life hack. They aren't a substitute for therapy, for real work, for facing your actual problems. They are a training ground for one specific thing. Doing something that you don't want to do. Repeatedly, consistently, without wanting to feel ready. And that skill applied to something real, your creative work, your relationship, your mental health, that's where real transformation happens. The cold showers is just a gym. Your actual life is the fight. So, should you try it? Definitely yes, but not because an influencer told you that it will change your life. Try it because 30 days of small daily discomfort might teach you something about yourself that no book ever could. Just don't expect from cold showers to do the deep work. That part is still on you. I still take cold showers. Not every day anymore. I will be honest with that too. Maybe 3 or 5 times a week. Not because I'm disciplined. Because I genuinely like how I feel afterwards. And that's maybe the most honest ending to this experiment. The goal was discipline. What I got was preference. I stopped doing because I had to. I kept doing it because I wanted to. And maybe that's what sustainable change actually looks like. Not force, not willpower grinding against resistance forever, but doing something long enough that it stops being a fight and starts being a part of who you actually are. If you tried cold showers or you are thinking to, drop your experience in the comments. I wanted to know your experience and what you wanted from that experience. So, like, comment and subscribe. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You've read the books, you've watched the videos, you've built morning routine, cold showers, meditation, gym. You know about discipline, you know about dopamine, about atomic habits, you can explain stoicism at a dining table.
I see it now. The path is clear. No longer a mystery, just execution.
You know what cortisol does to your body, and yet something still feels off. You are more educated about self-improvement than 99% people on this planet. Somehow you feel stuck. Not lazy, not ignorant, just stuck. If that's you, I'm going to tell you something that might be the most uncomfortable thing you've heard in a long time. Because the problem isn't that you need more self-improvement. The problem is that self-improvement become your new addiction. I want to tell you that I've never said this so clearly enough. When I came out from addiction, real addiction, substances, the kind that takes everything from you, I threw myself into self-improvement. And at first it felt like a salvation. Books, podcasts, routines. I was consuming everything that I could find. Waking up at 5 a.m., cold showers, journaling pages every morning. And it felt good. It felt like I was doing something right. Finally building the life I supposed to have. But slowly, without recognizing, something shifted. The self-improvement content started less to feel like a tool and more like a need. If I missed morning routine, anxiety. If I skipped journaling, guilt. If I wasn't reading, wasn't optimizing, wasn't growing, I felt like I was falling behind. Behind what? I didn't even know this. And here's the thing about addiction, real addiction, is that it always wears a disguise. Substances wore the disguise of relief. Self-improvement wore disguise of progress. But underneath both of them, there was one thing: avoidance. I wasn't improving myself. I was hiding inside the idea of improving myself. And the self-improvement industry, worth more than $40 billion, was more happy to help me do that. Here's what nobody in self-improvement space wants to admit: the industry doesn't profit from your transformation. It profits from your belief that you are not there yet. Think about it. Every book, every course, every YouTube video starts from the same premise. You're not enough as you are. You need to be better, faster, stronger, more disciplined and more optimized. And the moment you finish one book, there is another one waiting. Another system, another framework, another guru telling that their method is finally work. It never ends because it's designed to never end. There is a psychological mechanism that is called arrival fallacy, coined by psychologist Tal Ben-Shahar. It's the illusion that once you achieve something, once you build perfect routine, read enough books, become optimized version of yourself, you will finally feel okay. But the arrival never comes, because the goalpost always moves. And the self-improvement industry is built on making this goalpost moving again and again. Here's another thing it does. It turns pain into a product. Feeling lost? Here's the product of how to find yourself. Feeling anxious? Here's a book on Stoic philosophy. Feeling empty? Here's 30-day challenge. Your one becomes a market and you become consumer of solutions to problems that are constantly redefining. So you always need the next solution. I'm not saying that all self-improvement content is worthless. Clearly, I make this content in this space myself, but there's a massive difference between content that actually helps you move forward and the content that just making you feel like you're moving forward while keeping you perfectly in place. Here's the neuroscience beneath all of this. When you consume self-improvement content, a motivational video, a chapter from Atomic Habits, a podcast about discipline, your brain releases dopamine. Not because you did something, but because you thought about doing something. The anticipation of growth triggers the same things and the same reward system as the growth itself, which means your brain literally cannot find the difference between reading a book about discipline and being disciplined. It gets the hit either way. And hits are easier to get from a video than from hours of focused deep work. So your brain starting to be incredibly efficient, starts to prefer the hit over the work. You start to feel productive while being completely still. This is not a personal failure. This is a neuroscience, bro. But awareness is the beginning of exit, because once you see mechanism, you can't unsee it. Every time you reach for another video, another book, another framework, you can ask yourself honestly, am I learning something I need, or I'm just getting a hit? So what's the alternative? Not ignorance, not giving up on growth, but a completely different relationship with it. First, consume less, apply more. Most people are operating at 90% of consumption to 10% of application. Flip it. One book applied is a completely different thing than 15 books just half read. One principle lived daily is worth more than hundreds of principles that you can understand. Stop collecting insights, start testing them in your actual life. Second, sit with discomfort instead of medicating it. Here's the truth. Most self-improvement consumption happens in a discomfort moment. You feel lost, you watch a video. You feel anxious, you open a podcast. You feel empty, you start a new book. And the content temporarily soothes the discomfort without even addressing what's underneath that. Real growth happens when you sit with your discomfort long enough to understand it. Not every feeling needs a framework. Sometimes it just needs your honest attention. Third, measure output, not input. Stop measuring how much you consume. Start measuring what you built, what you created, and what you changed. Not I read 20 books this year, but what is different in my life because of those books. That question is uncomfortable, which is exactly why most people never ask it. I still consume content, I still read, I still reflect, I still learn. But it feels different now. It's not a hunger I'm trying to feed. It's a tool I pick up when I need it and put down when I don't. Because the version of me that compulsively consuming self-improvement content wasn't growing, he was hiding. Hiding from discomfort of actually building something, hiding from the risk of failure, hiding from the silence that comes when you stop consuming and have to sit with who you actually are. Real self-improvement is not a content category. It's quite unglamorous daily decision to show up your own life, even when no book told you to, even when no video inspired you, even when you don't feel ready. That version of growth nobody's selling, because you can't package it, you can't put it in a course, you just can't live it. If this hits something real in you, drop a comment with it, press like and subscribe. There is a moment most people never talk about. Not a depression, not a breakdown, just you look into a mirror one day and you don't fully recognize who is looking back. Not in a dramatic way, more like unsettling feeling. When did I become this person?
You just ask the same questions every week.
Maybe you've been functioning okay from the outside, going through the motions, do the work, but somewhere deep down you feel disconnected from yourself, from your choices, from who you thought you were becoming. If that feels familiar, stay with me, because what I'm about to share isn't just a theory. It's something I lived through, and it changed everything what I know about identity. A few years ago I lost myself completely, not gradually, suddenly. I was deep in addiction, and when you is at this place, you don't feel like you're losing yourself. You feel like you are yourself. That's a trap. The substances, the chows, the patterns, they just start to feel like your personality. Like this is just who you are now. And then I went through psychosis. I'm not going to dress that up. It was the most terrifying experience in my life. The line between what was real and what wasn't completely dissolved. And when I came back from that, I didn't know who I was. Not in a poetic way like most people use on Instagram. I mean literally, the version of me who was existed before felt like a stranger. And here's what nobody tells you about recovery, about transition and about rebuilding. The hardest part isn't pain. The hardest part is the silence after.
I can no longer avoid this part of me. I embrace my shadow, and it becomes one with me. I am whole now.
When the chaos is gone and you just left with yourself and you realize you have no idea who that is anymore. So why does this happen? Why do people lose themselves? Even without addiction, even without trauma. Here's what I've come to understand. You don't lose yourself all at once. You lose it by layers. Every time you make a choice that isn't yours, every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you shrink yourself to fit into a relationship, a job, an identity that someone else gave you, a layer disappears slowly, quietly, until one day you wake up and the person living your life doesn't feel like you anymore. Psychology calls this identity diffusion. When your sense of self becomes blurred, fragmented, you start borrowing identities from relationship, from roles, from substances, from social media.
What is happening? I won't let this define me.
Anything to fill the gap where you used to be. And here's the trap most people fall into. They try to rediscover themselves by looking outward. New city, new relationship, new routine. And those things can help. But don't get me wrong, I lived in Thailand, I lived in Bali, I sought expansion. But if you haven't done internal work, you just bring the same fragmented self to different locations. Carl Jung talked about this. He said the most important journey you will ever take is inward. He called it individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are. Beneath all the layers the world would put on you. But here's the thing that Jung didn't say clearly enough. Individuation is not comfortable thing. It requires to sit with the part of yourself you've been running from. The shame, the contradictions, the desires you've suppressed. The version of you that exists before the performance starts. Most people never go there because the performance collapsed, the addiction collapsed, the identity collapsed. And in that rubble I found something. Not a new self, not a reinvented version. Something that had been there the whole time, just buried in layers of time. So how to finally rediscover of who you are? Not with a personality test, not with a vision board, not with another self-help book. Here's what actually works, at least for me and the people I've talked to. Step 1. Stop trying to find yourself. Start listening yourself. There is a difference. Finding implies searching outside. Listening means going quiet enough to hear what's inside. What do you feel before you think about what you are supposed to feel? What do you want before you think about what you are supposed to want? Those impulses, the ones you edit before they even reach the mouth, that's where your real selves live. Step 2. Look at what you are keep coming back to. Not what you think you should love, not what looks good on paper. What do you keep returning to when you know there is no reward, even when nobody is watching? For me, it was understanding people, reflecting, creating, even in the darkest moments. I kept coming back to that. That thread, that's identity, not the label. The thread. Step 3. Be willing to disappoint version of yourself others need you to be. This is the hardest one, because some people in your life are attached to who you are now, the old version of yourself. The you that was easier to predict, easier to manage, easier to need. And when you start becoming more yourself, some people will feel it as a threat. That's not your problem to solve. Your job is not consistently be who you were. Your job is to be honest with who you are. I'm not going to tell you that this process is fast. It took me years. It took collapse. It took rebuilding from almost nothing. But here's what I know now that I didn't know then. You were never really lost. You were just covered discovered in others people's expectations, by survival mechanisms, by the identity you built to go through the hard times, that you forgot to update when the hard times passed. The real you wasn't destroyed by the chaos, it was waiting on the other side of it. And if you are in the middle of the chaos right now, if you are in transition, in a confusion, the I don't know who I am anymore, I want you to hear this. That feeling isn't a sign that you are broken, it's a sign you are becoming. The discomfort of not knowing who you are is the beginning of finding yourself, true self. Not a performer, not a role. You. That's enough for today. If something in this video hit you, drop a comment, subscribe and press like.